Hey guys, I have a couple things to say about Powers of Ten this week, and I didn't. This issue was kind of a slow one for me. I didn't have like a lot to say about it, but I it just like continued the themes from last week, and basically it didn't really have like a lot of surprises, I thought, and it was a lot of exposition, but I read a couple interesting things online that shed some light on some of my theories anyway. So I will say some stuff, some observations. Um, so the issue starts off, and there's Moira talking to Xavier on the bench, on the park bench. I wrote everything down that I'm going to say. Hopefully, that will be less stuttering than last week. But while she starts talking to him, there is a circle of birds flying above her, forming an Ouroboros symbol. And by the end of the issue, you basically put together that um, it, the birds flying in a circle symbolize the cyclical nature of time and the time loop that she has just created. By we can we can assume she just gave Xavier some information that's going to change the course of history for the X-Men. It's heavily implied that that Moira has information from the future. So that's what I think those birds are kind of symbolizing, the cyclical nature in that scene, that time loop that she has created. And we'll find out next time what that means. But um, also in the issue, probably the most exciting part of the issue for me was um, that Moira is referred to in the Krakoa code language at the bottom of the page as Theta, and Moira X also. I don't know what Moira X means, but she's referred to as Theta. And so last week in House of X, I had the theory about how Alpha and Omega, and Magneto is Omega and the end, and Xavier is Alpha, the beginning. And now we have Theta. So Theta is in the middle of the Greek alphabet there, and or the Latin alphabet, and Theta represents in science and mathematics an angle, and so I think that the significance of Moira and Theta is that an angle is always where the intersection of two lines is. And in that scene, we see that she's the intersection of literally two timelines. Um, so I think that's the significance there. Clearly, somebody decided to call her Theta, and I'm assuming that person Googled Theta like I did. So that's what I think that means. But also, I think that. Do you remember in a promotional picture for one of the covers by Mike Deodato, one of my favorite artists? Um, they have all the leaders of the mutant uh, community, and and also in the next cover for House of X number 2, sh- uh, she's in Moira is placed in between Magneto and Xavier. So that would be consistent with the alphabet theme of Alpha, Omega, and then Theta in the middle. So I think she not only is she that convergence of two timelines, but I think she's also going to be maybe the middleman between that relationship, maybe what sets them into different directions, or I don't know. She could also be um, ideologically placed on a spectrum between idealism and pragmatism. She could be in the middle, you know. Um, so that's what I think that means. But uh, I also read some interesting things on Comic Watch, the website. The reviewer said that it was interesting to see that last week the theme was that the mutants were aligned with nature and they were surrounded by plant life and they were natural and they only use natural objects. And then the humans were aligned with the robots and you only see them using machinery to propagate their agenda. In this issue, Powers of 10, number 1, you see the reversal of the roles through time. Um, and so this was on Comic Watch. So in the beginning of the issue, you see that the humans are aligned with the machines, but as time grows exponentially, you see the machines by the end of the book side with the mutants. Um, so I thought it was interesting, and the implications of that on Xavier in the present are that if he had the information about the outcome of the future, that in the future machines and mutants will succeed and humans will be basically extinct, will Xavier fight in the past to prevent the future? Will the X-Men fight to save humans from themselves? Because it's shown that the mutant, what's it called, the human mutant machine war, um, the humans lose it, and they are the ones who started it. So, will Xavier's agenda now be to save humans from themselves? So that's the prediction, I guess. But in the first, in House of X, we saw that nature was kind of like affiliated with um, safety, and this is also what this person says in this article as well. But habitats, things of this nature, and but then in the very end of this book, we see the humans in the far future, a millennia from now, are in a little zoo, and that's the only nature we see in a world of machine. So it's almost like nature is a character in this book, and it's the antagonist to the machines, because we see that in the future the world is all machine, and there's just like a tiny bit of nature. So that's my observation. About the religious themes, we see again Nimrod is presented with gifts from 3 travelers, like in the Bible, the 3 wise men, and it also was just like it was like another parallel to last week when I said that Xavier was giving the world 3 gifts. So I just thought that was funny. And Cardinal is said to be religious, and he refuses to take a name. It's said that these clone mutants um, have an affinity for creation myths and refuse to take a name, and I thought that was like flipping on its head what I said last week, which was when one of the cuckoos said that now that she's part of Krakoa, that she was going to have a baptism and take on a new name in this new credo. So I thought that we had the reversal of that now in a dark future. The religious character is disassociating from language, and that's again, it's like the interplay of language and religion that we saw last week with the alphabet and the names and Alpha and Omega. So there's a lot of intersection between language and religion in these books. So I'm gonna watch out for that to see what it's trying to prove. So far, what is what was the difference was the Cuckoo said that she was going to take on a new name when they were rising up in the religion, and then when Cardinal says that he would that or him and his folk say that they do not associate with names, um, they're in a dark period. So maybe it's saying the place. It's showing to us what role religion takes um, in different environments, dystopian, utopian. Asteroid K is in the future. So we know that whatever happens in the present, Krakoa will be plucked from Earth, presumably Magneto or another Omega level mutant, and Krakoa will be shot into space and become an asteroid nation. I think that's badass, but an interesting thing, if you read the footnote of Code, Krakoa is referred to as heaven. I mean, I know that because of all the symbolism to being this Garden of Eden, this heaven-like utopia, but it's literally shot into space. So I think Krakoa will end up in space, and that's what's that reference in the Code is to heaven. So it's going to be literally in heaven. But I have another prediction. There's a line of code that says Krakoa Mars, and we know it's said in the thing, the story that Sinister is going to clone mutants on Mars. I think that Krakoa is going to move to Mars, and I think that that's going to be mutant heaven as well, like Krakoa in space, and so fitting for a heaven for mutants to be in space. There's another code at the bottom of the page for surviving mutants. It refers to Apocalypse building something. We know Apocalypse is going to show up in the end, but I don't know what he's going to build. Is he going to help mutants? I don't really get his deal. But I know that whenever Apocalypse shows up, there's going to be more religious overtones, so I'm ready for that. But we also have a line of code that says Sinister number 5. In the solicitation for Powers of 10, number 5 shows Sinister on the cover, so I guess that's what that's referring to. But let's talk about the last page. This was good. The last panel shows mutant supremacy siding with machineries, and they're overseeing a habitat, a little zoo created for humans, and then birds fly in the sky in a linear fashion. And so the birds from the first panel are now in the last panel, and they're doing a linear flight. That's showing me the linear nature of time. So in this scene, the mutant character has a monologue and is speaking about how we must keep artifacts of the past to remind us to not repeat the crimes that we've repeated in history again. And so we can learn, move forward, evolve. So that's what I think that linear flight of the birds is signifying, and it's in direct contrast to the first panel of the Powers of 10, number 1, where Moira's birds are flying in a circle because she's created a time loop. So I don't know what this is going to mean. I think that what Hickman is trying to get us to think is we've got two ideas. One is time in a circle, one is time in a line. Which one is going to win? because we've seen in this story the outcome of the future. But can it be changed? Is Xavier going to be able to, with knowledge from the future, to be able to change the future? Because we see it's pretty bleak for humans, at least. We get a role reversal of humans versus mutants. In the present, mutants are oppressed. In the future, humans are kept in cages by mutants. So, what have we learned from history? I would ask the librarian who speaks that line. Um, so, here is my bold prediction. I believe that at the end of this storyline that Hickman has set into motion, I think mutants will fill the role of a morally ambiguous party, um, and they'll see that it's not so easy to be in the majority, um, because and here's I have evidence, because I think it's foreshadowing when Magneto says in House of X #1 that mutants have never started a war, mutants have never oppressed, mutants have never kept slaves. Um, I don't think he just said that to win an argument. I think it was a dramatic irony for the audience that, or the reader, that mutants will have a role reversal in the future. They'll see that when you take on the powers of a nation, you're going to be colonizing spaces like Mars and the moon, and you're going to be fighting against other nations, and that's the nature of the game. You're going to start a mutant war. Um, so that's my prediction. Um, it's already kind of come true, I guess, since mutants are rule supreme in the next millennia. But we'll see if they can break that future. That time circle. Um, but that's what I predicted um, last week. All right. Well, I'm very excited for the next issue because it's got Moira in a kaleidoscope cover of House of X #2. I think it's going to be an awesome issue because of that. I want to see why she's standing in between mutants there that are ideologically diametrically opposed, um, as she is Theta. All right. Uh, Bye. And you can follow me on Graphic is Novel on Instagram, and you can see some of the visual aids and some of the conspiracy things that I post about House of X. All right,